Good evening and welcome to That Gaming Show, now with 33% less hosts. I'm, of course, Jackson Ryan, and to my right we have Mr. Beau Shay. Of course, this is That Gaming Show. We come to you live every week, unfiltered, ready to go, talk about the biggest news in video games. Beau, we've got a bit to talk about today, but first, the Crowies are still going, mate. The Crowies are still going. You get that in there. Actually, I brought in a little extra today. Just chuck this one in here as well. You beauty. Get the Crowies out there. All right, like that.
Right, yes. Great esports champions.
Yeah, Legacy
Adelaide
esports,
Crows.
that's right. But first, we're actually talking about video game costs tonight and how much money it costs to produce a video game. Which it was raised by Jason Schreier of Kotaku US in an article today about how much it actually costs to get people in and to make a video game.
Yeah,
and,
so covering the developers, designers, directors,
overheads, the
office
space, that's right, all that sort of stuff. And it turns out that it's about 10,000 US per person per month.
Yeah.
So Jason went and did some back of the napkin sort of math, and he has found what I find pretty interesting is he's found sort of a figure, I guess, for the sort of big AAA studios and how much they're sort of spending on games like Destiny 2.
Yeah, he's trying to kind of give a visual representation of what it takes to go into making these big name titles.
That's right, and games like that, he, with his maths, at least, seem to be costing about 180 million plus. So I started thinking, what else costs 100? What kind of mediums are using 180 million dollars? And of course, movies is the first one that I came to. And I started thinking about how much people work on a movie set and that sort of thing, and how much that's worth. And I think what I kind of came to was the fact that people get underpaid was the first thing that sort of jumped out at me. It would seem $10,000 per person per month isn't how much salary they make, of course. That includes overheads and all that, as we're talking about.
Yeah.
So I guess my first question for you, as someone who has been around the traps, is, of course, how do you think that money gets split up in terms of how much they're paying for space, how much people are getting paid?
Well, I mean, it's how long's a piece of string.
How much is marketing getting?
Yeah, well, and that's it. Like, there's so many different facets that go into this, and the thing is, you do have economies of scale as well. So, I mean, like he said in the article, it's very much a back of the napkin type equation that he's done. But when you get into, because he does some comparisons between indie games, which might have 5 people working on it, through to the big studios who might have 400.
Yeah.
So renting an office, the more people you put in there, the economies of scale kick in. So So, trying to correlate, dollar values to specific people is a bit harder. But, the comparisons to movies is valid, but the thing is, as you said, and as it says in the article, the games industry are so protective of those numbers. You can tune in and see in Variety or wherever, see how much Jake Gyllenhaal is being paid for his next film.
Yeah.
You will not know how much the director at Naughty Dog is getting to make their next title, or the sequel to The Last of Us or whatever. So, which is a big, which is probably the blockbuster comparison.
Makes perfect sense, yeah.
But in saying that, while the director at Naughty Dog, who has a fantastic profile within the industry, doesn't kind of bring that, won't be the person to get bums on seats at a cinema.
Sure.
So I think it's not quite apples and apples. But in saying that, I can't quite remember where I was going with that point. But it's not apples and apples, and we do know some kind of ballpark numbers for some of the big titles. I think it was GTA 5 where they came out and said that it was $450 million to make. And if you've ever played it, you can see why. It's quite expansive. It's a massive.
And that's also a game that doesn't stop. It's not a game that you set and forget as such. Rockstar still work on GTA, still pumping money into it, and people are still buying it, in fact. So, I mean, that's one of the, that sort of example probably doesn't work quite the same as, say, like a big blockbuster movie, which is set and forget in a way. Once it's made, that production cost is forgotten about. Everyone's got their salary, hopefully. Harrison Ford still hasn't got paid for Star Wars or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, that sort of thing doesn't factor in. But if we bring it back a little bit more locally to the Australian games industry scene, probably over the last 6 to 8 months, there's been a lot of talk, especially since Senator Ludlam dual citizenship issues, about having a representative in government supporting the Australian games industry to say, hey, we need some funding. So we're not getting funded as such. So
and it's tough because those numbers are scary. when you're a person who's sitting in government and you're like, right, the Screen Australia Fund, when they had money put aside for games development, I can't remember the exact number. It was between $1 to $5 million. I seem to remember the number 4, but it was under $10 million. And if you're using those kind of figures that Jason's put in that article to work out, how far that goes, and you're not going to dump all that into one development of one game, really doesn't stretch very far. Even though that's a fairly significant funding initiative by the government, and it was eventually taken away anyway. So I think what that means, the biggest fear I have about all of this is that it will scare off government. That we will see the government say, oh God, $10,000 US a person, it's the economies aren't there, it's not worth investing in. We'll leave it alone because we don't have Senator Ludlam banging the drum for us anymore. So, but in saying that, what I think this does, what this does mean is that we have the opportunity to be smarter. And that's something that Australia, I think, does really well. Like, we do really well at punching above our weight. And I think you can use film industry analogies with that. Like, there's lots of little Aussie films that have done great on the world stage.
For sure.
And I think this is a great opportunity for Australian games developers to take the same approach. Go guerrilla style, get down and dirty. Don't rent the warehouse conversion in Surrey Hills or Fitzroy in Melbourne. Be smart about it. And I think that you can still build a great product without without spending lots of money. It's like with any startup, like any business, and Australia really struggles because we have such high wages in Australia. Most industries struggle to produce good content, but use the film analogy as an example, it is possible. And I think, I would love to see, the government resurrect the funding that we had through Screen Australia, even if it's in another form, and putting it into places, like the indie games developers based out of Melbourne.
Arcade there.
Like those places, like just show, give them a chance to show what they can do. Like, don't be scared off by this. Like, just give them a shot. That's my biggest fear, is that they're going to be scared off by these numbers.
How do you think then that something like obviously video games would come under the arts sort of funding? It's a hard thing for me to sit back and look at and go, all right, let's take money away from these kind of art. Like, we need more money in general, I think, is the problem as well. So if you're looking at taking money from one art and putting it into another, of course, then you're taking away money from another industry as well. Now, as guys in video games, I think we are more likely to push that. So we're always going to be like, hey, we should be championing the cause of video games instead. Whereas those other arts industries, on a show like this, of course, we're not going to talk about them, but they still do exist. And I think even those industries are the ones that are sort of underfunded at the moment too. So it's not games as such that are losing money or not getting funded. It's just that it's one of the arts that has suffered under over the last probably 5, 6 years, a pretty hard budget that comes down as well. I mean, to get all political, because that's what this show's all about, Q&A.
Absolutely,
and if you have any questions that are politically based, don't send them in, because we have no idea.
Well, I think the great thing of that is, there's research out there which supports where the investment dollars should flow. This year alone, we've had the PwC Media and Entertainment Outlook, which predicts, leading growth in the industry for video games sales. We've also had the Digital Australia study, Dr. Jeffrey Brand out of Bond University, who's done, which is the longest running research done in one industry in the world. So he's, has also said it's the #1 growth category for entertainment. So I think, yes, like it very much, it sucks when you have to take money from something else. Like with everything in this country, like if to fund one thing, you have to take it from somewhere else. Okay, right. But use the data that's there. Dr. Jeffrey Brand is really friggin' smart, and the PwC team are really, really smart.
It comes to that, doesn't it? It comes down to the fact that the government, in a way, is not looking at what the growth industries are. They're just saying, all right, let's continue more of the same. And it's one of the things that really does get affected is the indies and the independent developers. And we're playing Indie Game Movies trailer behind us. These guys sometimes are only one-man teams, and they sort of put their life on hold as such to create a video game that then goes on to make a lot of money. Some of them, but some of them just can't even get to that point.
Well, one of the points on that, Rovio, who made Angry Birds, that was their 52nd game that they made. So you do have to throw a lot of shit at the wall and see what sticks, or spaghetti at the wall. Let's be less vulgar.
Yeah.
So
why'd you throw good spaghetti away?
Well, that's it's kind of wasteful environment that we're in.
Exactly.
In this
Don't be throwing things away. Use them.
So yeah, you can't expect everyone to be a hit, but then how do you keep yourself going while you're making 51 other games before you get your Angry Birds?
Yeah. How much do you reckon the CEO gets paid at Rovio?
Well, they got bought out.
That's a question from Bruce Dawson.
Right. How much does he get paid? Too much. But they made it. But the thing is, now you've got cartoons on TV and plush toys, and that's actually the merch and the licensing is actually worth heaps more than the games themselves.
There you go.
So
a little bit of marketing, I guess. A little bit of marketing tip. Make sure that you have a friendly-looking character that's easily marketable to children.
That's how George Lucas made his billions. He owned the licensing to all the products. So the films obviously.
Does he still own? No, he gave them to Disney. Didn't he?
Gave it all away. Yeah.
Good on you,
Disney.
Good on you, Georgie. I think that's all we'll talk about for money for now. Even though you look like you wanted to say something else, because now we're talking about tombs. Yeah, we're talking about tombs now. I always like a cheeky transition, but tombs, because we're talking about Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, the new Tomb Raider. So we already know Angelina Jolie did a middling, a decent movie adaptation
for its time.
Of Lara Croft back early 2000s, I think. Yeah. And now we've got Alicia Vikander, who was awesome in Ex Machina.
Oh my God, amazing film, amazing actress.
What a great film that is. Yeah. And she is Lara Croft.
Yeah.
The cool thing about this reboot is that it's essentially based off the rebooted franchise Tomb Raider game.
Yeah,
so Tomb Raider, obviously, games, the rebooted games that came out now probably 5-6 years ago.
Yep.
Rise of the Tomb Raider, of course, as well.
Yep.
Those games are... Those are honestly some of the best AAA games you'll find in the last probably 5 or so years. And so that's why this is sort of exciting. Now, we haven't seen a trailer or anything yet.
So it does drop tomorrow. We had a teaser today, but the full trailer drops tomorrow. Yeah.
That's right, full trailer drops tomorrow. We sort of got a vision of Alicia.
You can see on the screen behind us
with her Lara Croft on. Cool thing is she has the ice pick, which is the major weapon in the Tomb Raider reboot. What I want to talk about here, though, is why are we talking about this again, Beau? This is another video game adaptation of a movie adaptation of a video game, and why? Why is this happening still? None of them have been good. Why are we getting this?
Well, I think it's the same reason that we're seeing Fast and Furious 7. What are we up to?
It's 8 now.
The same reason that... same reason we get more Star Wars films, but I'm really friggin' excited for the new Star Wars films. It's because they're tapping into ready-made audiences. So they look at, like you said, this game, the reboot versions of this game that came out a few years back are some of the best games of their years, and best games of the last 5 years. Like, they're really fantastically made games.
Yeah.
So if you're a big Hollywood executive and you're like, I need a new idea for my summer blockbuster, why don't you just tap into this audience of 600 million people around the world who have bought the Tomb Raider game and make something there? So it's tapping into ready-made audiences is why we're seeing people give it another shot. So, we saw...
You're going to go with Assassin's Creed or
I'm going Assassin's Creed. It's if you've seen the Assassin's Creed film...
Yeah.
Do not watch the film, just go and play one of the games. Any one of them is...
No, not even that. And some of those games aren't that great.
Yeah, some of those games are terrible, but it's still better than...
And that's Michael Fassbender too.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Another fantastic actor.
Fantastic Bender, that's what we call him.
But they had a really great cast, just across the board.
It did have a good cast. So, was Marion Cotillard in there as well?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know.
Tell us in the comments.
Honestly, I reckon I watched 25 minutes of it and then I fell asleep. It's not worth it whatsoever. But we're here anyway. We are here, and we're talking about video game movies again. Oh yeah.
Well, just on that, Ubisoft they have got more productions in the works, more films coming out. They are going to produce a TV series with Assassin's Creed, and they've got Splinter Cell coming out with Tom Hardy. Again, great lead.
It's just not. It doesn't carry for some reason.
Oh, and The Division with Jake Gyllenhaal. So that's why I mentioned him before, because it was on my mind. He's always on my mind.
See, The Division is one that can go any direction, though. That's maybe kind of an advantage. I think trying to tie these franchises to a formula is really where they start falling into a bit of trouble. And if you look at something like Assassin's Creed, it kind of butchered the formula and then still butchered the movie. It didn't even try and go that.
But the Assassin's Creed world is so convoluted. I remember the first game, Assassin's Creed game I played, and I didn't know any of the backstory. I just picked it up. Who doesn't like scaling walls and stabbing dudes? So picked it up and played, and then all of a sudden you're in a lab and you go into this system where you get transported back to the memories of your ancestors. It's a very difficult concept to take on, even when you're playing it as a game. But games are quite fantastical, so it's a bit easier to accept. Trying to get that message across in a cinema with people who've just come for escapism, not really want to think too much about why is he in a studio and who is this person he's representing. I thought it was going to be a challenge anyway.
Yeah.
And then they just butchered it so poorly. But the director at Ubisoft, I can't remember his exact title, who was interviewed about it, said the difference between film franchises and game franchises, if you're putting out the next Assassin's Creed, or you're putting out Dishonored 2 or whatever, the Shadow of Mordor is coming out in October, right? If it's not quite ready to go, they can push the date back.
Yeah.
They're complete masters of their own destiny. If they think this isn't right, we'll push the date back.
From games point of view, I mean, yeah.
The games developers can, yeah. People get upset about it, but they still buy it.
Yeah, I mean, they can push it back. It does happen quite a lot, but also, and we were talking just about video games and money just a moment ago, I think that there's a lot of crunch time as well. Like, there are times when the publisher will say, hey, we need this by this date. So I understand what you're saying.
First day patches, yeah.
That's right, yeah. Like, get it out and people crunch time sort of stuff. Yeah. But you're saying with the movie franchise, you don't have that leniency.
There's zero flexibility.
Unless you lose your director because he has artistic differences or whatever, and then you chuck in J.J. Abrams. Star Wars. Anyway, sorry.
In JJ we trust, don't worry.
Yeah.
So it's a little less flexible in that regard. So
that's why you think it contributes a little bit to the issues?
I think so, yeah. It's also, I think a lot of the time, studios, I'm talking about film studios, making calls for trying to cater to the broadest possible audience possible.
Yeah.
And not allowing that creative control to the games companies who have cultivated these audiences over decades in some instances. I mean, what are we up to with Assassin's Creed?
It's too many. They stopped naming them. There's no numbers now.
Yeah, right. And now we're going back to Origins. So it's even earlier now.
Yeah.
But so that's part of the issue as well. Is that it's different people working on it, different timelines, different outcome requirements at the end. I was trying to think today of a good video game to film adaptation. I know that people talk about this all the time, and I couldn't think of one. Yeah,
there's not many, and even the ones that are sort of considered passable are more like, I guess, sort of like your cult classic sort of titles. Resident Evil still gets, Resident Evil, I don't like it personally, but it does still have a following. They got to a certain amount of movies because people still wanted to go. That's the thing. There is a passion.
Over the top.
But there's a real passion from games fans to want to see that in action, and I just feel like they've always been like, we want a good video game adaptation to a movie so badly that we just forgive. Next time it comes around. Like, tomorrow this trailer's going to drop, and I guarantee you that Twitter will light up about Alicia Vikander. I mean, it lit up today because the poster, her neck is about 4 inches longer than it is meant to be. Like, any human has a neck that size. So she looks like a giraffe. So it's just one of those. It's crazy how I think gaming fans are always very passionate about their medium, but they even then push that over into the film medium and really get behind stuff, even though they've been burnt many times.
Well, and that's why they keep getting made.
Yeah, that's true.
That's why they can produce horrible films like Assassin's Creed, the movie, starring Michael Fassbender.
Yeah.
And they're going to produce more of them.
Will it be better than the Emoji Movie? Have never seen the Emoji Movie, but just purely on idea.
Honestly, the Emoji Movie might be better than Assassin's Creed movie. But
that's not fair.
Well,
no, that's not right. Sorry, Michael. Michael Fassbender tunes in. A shit emoji.
Shit emoji.
Fassbender, of course, tunes in and writes in every week. So sorry about that, Michael.
Sorry, Fass.
But can this one then be the first successful one, commercially successful?
Every single time we're gonna hope that it's the next best thing. I hope what we see with Tom Hardy and the Jake Gyllenhaal in The Division.
I hope they're amazing.
like hopes for these franchises to fail. Like,
No,
like you said, like we love them.
Yeah.
We love these games. We love these worlds. We love that. You know, we've been a part of the Assassin's Creed universe for the last 10 years. You know, fantastic. That's the reason we love being part of this industry. Is that you can put out the 7th sequel in a series, and it's just as amazing, if not better, than the iterations before it.
Yeah.
GTA 5 is the best GTA that's ever been. So, you know, and it's the 5th one. Apart from the Fast and Furious franchise, you know, there's not many other entertainment mediums that can say that. So
yeah, I think the benefit that most video game adaptations have going right now is they're not just putting Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in them all. That's my.
But they should.
I mean, I love Dwayne, but we don't need him in everything. We don't need him in everything.
Put him in everything.
Well, okay, well, we're going to have to agree to disagree.
You heard it here first, folks. The first thing we've disagreed on together.
But that's it for Tomb Raider, because we're going to find out the trailer tomorrow. And now we've got a little bit more of an interesting thing to talk about. Now we talk about COD. Yeah, COD is, of course, Call of Duty, as you know, Beau, and as most of our viewers, I hope, would know, that Call of Duty, one of the biggest franchises on the face of planet Earth. It's actually a documentary has come out about how big Call of Duty is and how big it's gotten, and also sort of how it rose to such prominence.
Yeah, it's got a great name too.
Its name is, of course, CODumentary, which is a play on words of documentary if you're playing at home. Yeah, it was released actually this morning at 10 o'clock. It's on video on demand, Steam. You can get it on. It's a little independent documentary worth checking out. I watched a bit of it today. I didn't watch it all. I'm sorry, but it's very interesting. And it just sort of chronicles the rise of Call of Duty, not just from a consumer point of view, but also professionally.
Yeah.
So it follows a few of the elite players in Call of Duty.
Okay.
Cool thing about Call of Duty, of course, from my point of view, and what the documentary raises, that Modern Warfare, the original Call of Duty Modern Warfare, sort of raised the bar a bit in the way that Call of Duty games were perceived and acclaim-wise. Now, Call of Duty started back in... like in terms of where they set it, it was back in World War One.
Yeah.
So and now they're doing World War II.
Yeah.
What I want to talk about with COD is a little bit about World War II, which is a new game, playing the trailer behind that came out today. World War II is a really brutal war, and it ends in a really brutal way too. And actually, we saw just this afternoon, Tokyo Game Show, Sony had a presser only a couple of hours ago, and they showed Call of Duty World War II straight away. That was the first thing that sort of popped up on screen. Now, these are Japanese people, of course. So World War II ended basically because 2 atomic bombs got dropped on Japan. Yeah. That's a very touchy subject. I'm not sure that they'll even touch on it in this game. No, and of course not. I don't even think they'll put it in the game, to be perfectly honest. But that's how sort of, not touchy, but that's how fragile the situation is around this content. So, Call of Duty has dipped from a critical acclaim point of view.
Well, and also in kind of like,
I guess the general zeitgeist.
It kind of hit its peak a couple of iterations ago.
Yeah.
Just before Advanced Warfare, I think, was Black Ops 2 might have been the kind of
still
on the ascension. Yeah.
Yeah. And to me, those, like, I'm not a huge Call of Duty fan. I'll preface with that, but those newer iterations that have really taken the franchise away from its origins in a way, and started putting into space and adding all sort of weapons that don't really exist anymore. I don't know if that's why. Do you think that? I mean, do you think that's why this sort of the sheen has sort of come off Call of Duty?
I think there's a number of things. I think even as you were saying, I'm not a huge fan of Call of Duty. I think I played Black Ops 2 was the last one I played. I haven't played. And even then, very briefly. I never play online, mainly because I'm shit. I'm really shit at it. And the 14-year-olds on there will absolutely destroy me. So kind of got weaned off that very early on. You know, where you jump in, you're like, oh, this will be fun. Like, play a bit of Miles, bang, you're dead. Yeah. All right, we'll respawn. All right, you run it, you're dead. Yeah, you're dead. You're dead. And
if you're no good.
And I am not very good. Yeah. So, you know, all I wanted was to just go in and blow shit up. Like, that's kind of what I think the appeal was there. Like, it did a really good job of, you jump in, you get these real guns that really existed, and it's, historically accurate in a lot of instances. And you're like, oh, cool. Like, and you get to throw grenades and drive tanks and fly. Like, it's just escapism, like just pure
escapism.
Yeah. Has the sheen gone off because it's moved away from that? I don't think so. Like, when we were talking earlier, fighting in space actually sounds quite appealing to me, and I might actually tune in and test it out because that's just something different for me. But I think the problem is that the games haven't changed enough between iterations. So we were talking earlier about how expensive games are to make. So they've obviously got this fantastic franchise that they just need to update each year so they can minimize their costs but still reap the rewards of multiplayer and the sales that kind of come from that. So I think they haven't innovated enough in it, and also just the number of competitors. Battlefield has really stepped up its game. Battlefield 1, which was out last year, went back to World War One. Was a lot of people were raving about. EA really put a lot of effort into making that quite different and innovation. It put a lot of it was more of, behind
and it was like this accurate representation of World War One as well, which people really clicked with. Unusually, but also Advanced Warfare was such a massive cultural sort of cut through into the mainstream a bit as well, and I think like that was sort of the peak in a way for the multiplayer experience and the way that people sort of came around and built a community, and they built a community around each game, of course. But that was sort of the touchstone.
They did it well, and they rode that wave up. Of course, people were really getting into the multiplayer. Like, oh, great! Like, this is actually fun. Well, people that didn't get destroyed as soon as they stepped in. So. And that's great, but there's just too much competition, not just even within games, for your attention. And, as we get older, you have less and less time to commit to playing games. And, in saying that, you can jump in and spend a couple of minutes playing in a multiplayer and kind of scratch the itch and, blow up a few things and, great, and then go off and do something else. But there's just so much competition for your attention these days, with all the streaming devices and, fantastic TV everywhere. Like, you just really have to be on top of your game to get to maximize your product, and they've just had it too easy for too long. So it'd be great to see. I think it's a great company. They're doing great things. They make invest in new IP all the time. So great. There's obviously a very, very big base there that they have to be very conscious of, and as a publicly listed company, you don't want to piss off your core base of users, right? So maybe it might be easier for them to just keep cranking out, updated versions each year.
And that's what they've done anyway. So
that's
it's
what they've
done
anyway.
In a way, I look at those games and I've touched on them personally, as in I've played them to a degree. Like, I don't get involved in them just because I sort of agree to a way that they are samey and sort of the additions are not something that appeal to me as sort of a more casual FPS player. But what most interests me about World War II, Call of Duty World War II, is going to World War II. Like, I kind of want to see how they approach this. This is very
10 years on, or whatever it was from the first time they were there.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And it's very interesting to me how a company can sort of just pick a huge event in history, in human history, and rework it to be a video game. It's sort of a sensitive subject, but at the same time, I don't want to stop creativity in a way. I want companies to do this and explain to kids about these sort of issues. But what does a Nazi look like in this game? Does a Nazi look like a villain? Is a Nazi meant to look like a villain in a World War II game?
Well, that's it, right? Like, it's
can you have a sympathetic tone, even accidentally, towards the essentially the acts of evil?
Well, in multiplayer, you usually choose a faction.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
you do that in Battlefield as well, and. It's not fair to the developers to be like, hey, you're actively encouraging any of this stuff, because that's not what they're doing. But I just mean in terms of how you deal with that and how you program and how you tell a story in a video game, how does that come across?
Well, it'll be interesting to see how this goes, because obviously at the moment there is a lot of talk about, the rise of the alt-right and Nazi groups primarily in the United States, but they do exist in other countries around the world as well. This game is where you get to shoot Nazis, and if you can play them in multiplayer, it'll just be interesting to see what discourse kind of comes out of this. Obviously the games industry isn't entire society, but I bet you someone on the project or some TV show will go, all right, are games encouraging violence because now there's Nazis in these games?
And I think that comes back to the fact that this is Call of Duty as well.
Yeah.
Like, Wolfenstein has done this, right?
Yeah.
As we discussed off air earlier, like Wolfenstein, you've been punching Nazis since, well, back in the 80s, right? So, I mean, it's just that this is such a mainstream game in terms of its reach.
Yeah.
Sort of unseen or unheard of. Even maybe Destiny's maybe one that's sort of getting close to that now. Destiny 2, of course, just because you can see it
tonight, right?
That's right, which you can see everywhere. But Call of Duty has the name, and I think if someone just comes in and looks at Call of Duty from an outsider's perspective, they may, like you say, it might end up on the project. It may, oh wow, we can go back to World War II and shoot Nazis. Oh wow, this character is a Nazi. You play as a Nazi for one level, you know, like, and it's like what they did with Modern Warfare, where you played as a terrorist in an airport, that sort of thing, and that was a huge issue. And there is some responsibility, I think, on the devs
to I agree. Like
to at least be careful with it.
Yeah, 100%. Like with any sensitive material, you should be, and games shouldn't be exempt from that. Like you said, like it'll just be interesting to see how
the discourse flows.
How the discourse kind of rolls out. You know. Yeah, I did have a point, and then I was just about to say it, and now I've forgotten it. So, tune in for Beau's fantastic
Beau has the worst memory, and luckily someone can keep this show on track. But we're going to go off track just to say goodbye. These guys right here are playing, Beau, on Friday night. They play the Geelong Cats. There's all the names of the club members over the years, club players. I'm excited for that. That's all for that gaming show this week. I like this show. We had, unfortunately, no Milky, but we did get through quite a bit. And there's still a whole week of games to talk about. We'll be back next Tuesday. We're thinking 7:30.
Yeah.
I mean, tell us.
If you
do
don't
you like 7:30?
If you think we suck, you can tell us that as well.
Oh, I'm happy to take all that. 7:30 is good. You can come at 8 as well, perhaps, and watch the replay.
Yeah, and fast forward through all the bits where I can't remember what I'm talking about.
That's exactly right. Open mic tonight on AFL Footy channel on Foxtel. Of course, featuring Brian Taylor. I don't know why that came to mind just to sign off with, but that's all we got time for tonight. We'll see you next week, 7:30.
See you then.
Thanks, guys.